Okay, we'll get going here. Again, welcome to another Wherefore webinar. We are lucky to have Carlos Lawrence from ASC Consultants with us, and I'll let him introduce himself in a few minutes. As you know, if you've attended these before, we try to pack a lot of information in a pretty short period of time. This one will probably go a little bit longer than our normal 15 minutes. We'll probably end up at about 20 or 25 minutes. So um, we'll get started here quickly. A couple of housekeeping items. There is a Q&A available. If you want to ask a question, go ahead and put it in there and we will try to answer those in line. And we will be launching a very short poll as well here in a couple of minutes. So please log your answers to that just for some information to help us drive the content, not only today, but then also for future webinars. So without further ado, we'll kind of get started here with a couple of intros. You probably know who Wherefore is already if you're attending this, but we are an ERP focusing exclusively on businesses that have compliance requirements. And you can read them right there, but typically those are food and beverage, chemicals, nutraceuticals, personal care products, cannabis, people that need to document compliance tasks and traceability as they run their businesses. And so that's who we are. We deal with inventory management and then the compliance requirements around it. So again, I'm going to introduce Carlos here. He's an expert in all things compliance as well as a bunch of other areas, including ERPs. So without further ado, Carlos, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Carlos from ASC Consultants. I've been working in the food industry since I was 16. So uh, I've come to ASC going through the supply chain. I've done everything from food service to working with farmers in remote villages in the mountains. And along that way, I came into the compliance area and saw the problems with getting people into a compliant and qualifying position so that they could sell their product. And that's where ASC's Grow Safely comes from. We basically help clients get those hurdles to get their permitting and working with certifications so they can meet customer demands and put in QMS, QA, inventory systems, and basically trying to help their business run consistently, efficiently, and hopefully paper free, which is one of the reasons we're here today, is basically looking at doing compliance with tools.
Great. Good. Well, thanks for that. Couple of the, as we kick it off here, why don't we kind of talk about the point in time at which it makes sense for folks to start looking at upgrading their compliance systems?
So one of the things we have done is we've worked with everything from startups to Fortune 500s, putting systems in. And I can tell you that the biggest hurdle most people have ends up being cultural. And so that means getting people to change from these tools they have now, which seem easy, such as spreadsheets and paper and items that you can silo information into and everybody can use their own version. It becomes difficult to make those changes, but they're necessary so that all your company is on the same uh, page when you look at information. So the things you're going to need to scale are getting control over documents, getting control over information, and basically having audit trails that everyone can access, including the work done before them and after them. So we find that doing implementation as you get larger, creates a geometric cost in time and energy to get it done. Whether that's putting a new system in or changing one over, the first hurdle is always getting organized to run on any kind of system.
Interesting. So do you find that it's more related, the kind of trigger point at which it makes sense to convert systems? Is it some size of a company? Is it business complexity? Are there any kind of trigger points where you find it makes sense to really look at upgrading things from kind of the spreadsheet, paper, manual types of systems?
It has to do with distribution, and normally the earlier the better. Nowadays, with tools like Wherefore, it's not really that big a hurdle compared to what it was to get onto an internal server-based ERP or convenient tool. The amount of savings you're going to get in labor and in efficiency in just information management, it quickly repays itself. So I recommend clients look at these we usually recommend them even before they go to market. Like, get your information in there. Doing something as simple as a recall exercise, it can cut that recall exercise time from 4 hours down to 10 minutes. Just being able to find the information in an efficient manner. So always the earlier the better. And, you know, their ROI of a cloud-based ERP is very easy to calculate and very easy to basically have it work out in your benefit.
Great. Thanks for that. And let's kind of go on to next, kind of the criteria that you might use to evaluate these types of systems.
So when we're looking at an ERP system, basically, you know, you're looking to accomplish um, all the things you want to track your material. What I like to tell people is we want to look for something that tells you where your stock is, tells you what it costs to make product, and can do the basic uh, compliance items you need to do, which is traceability, record keeping, ability to call up information. So we have a poll up here. Uh, you can give us a sense of where you're at now and what your concern is to basically face implementation. And if you've basically got some concerns about it, I probably have heard them before, and feel free to ask questions in the webinar later on. Then we'll try and help you understand how you tackle those.
Great. And so you kind of talked about an audit earlier. Most companies, and pretty much all of them actually, once they end up going to market, are going to have to go through some sort of an audit process. Do you have any kind of nightmare stories from folks where they really had some business interruptions as a result of not having any systems in place?
Well, yeah, I've had clients basically not be able to they've had the FDA walk in the door and not be able to find records. And I've had the other side where we've saved people from audits. And as a matter of fact, the system running was Wherefore. We were just in the middle of implementation, and I actually had uploaded some documents into Wherefore that they couldn't find the physical version of the facility. So I've had it go both ways, where they couldn't find documents and they basically failed the audit, at least that part of the audit, and where the only reason they passed the audit was because they had started putting information into the system and they couldn't find the documents. So document retrieval during an audit is actually probably one of the most challenging parts of it. Everybody knows where their SOPs are. Everybody knows where even their manual records are, but things like COAs and receiving documents, those can be hard to find during an audit.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Great. Um, Great. So kind of the first step in that process is probably goal setting and things around that. We'll kind of go to the next topic here, which is goals around specifically, any of the types of compliance-based companies we talked about. They're making products and tracking inventory. They might have one facility, multiple facilities, but with regard to kind of the goal setting attached to an implementation product, these are kind of some of the basics, but could you elaborate on some of these a little bit?
Yeah, obviously, you really want to know where your stock levels are. Basically, you wouldn't believe how easy it is, even with a small bill of materials, to lose track of raw materials or timelines or things that are going to interfere with your production. I don't know how many times I've seen production lines stop for what seemed like insignificant ingredients or packaging materials because someone overlooked it. So knowing where your stock levels are, on your raw material side so you can manufacture and on your finished goods side so you can ship is probably the first thing you're going to find as a benefit to this in getting them in. The next is basically, okay, I can find stuff, I can sell stuff. Okay, what did it really cost you to make it? Because that can be counterintuitive at times. You think you're not spending that much on a material. Things like, commodities, chocolate's been known to go up 5 times in an annual period. And suddenly your product isn't profitable anymore because you haven't uh, got a good way to figure out profitability as you're making product. And then, of course, while we're here today, compliance and traceability. I think everybody knows you have the one up, one down rule. You have to know where all your materials came from, and you have to know where they went. You want to remember that when you're doing traceability, uh, that the FDA is concerned about when you got a product and not necessarily uh, what the lot number was coming from your vendor. And that's where an inventory system would help a lot, because if you're recording your receiving in real time, you'll know when that shipment came in, which is the number one question they're going to have. So the other items of traceability are actually record retention and your production control points. Can you verify you've met your CCPs and your CPs? Can you go find your records? If you have an inventory control system, which allows uh, taking pictures of documents, it's the perfect place to store that. Whether I'm working in QuickBooks and doing accounting, or whether I'm working in ERP and I'm doing production and QA, if I can store the documents there, that's where I store them. Uh, Administrative filing systems and computers are notoriously, I'm going to admit this, I wouldn't want to find a document in my own file system here sometimes. So storing documents in the system for which they're related to is the easiest way to basically confirm your compliance when you need to find the source document from which you made the record. It's great you have all the data in there, but you also are going to need the source document when you're doing something like an audit or an FDA visit or a state health department visit. You want to be able to find those originations. There's also another reason to keep it in inventory control. It's great to have spreadsheets or paper, all that thing. It's great to have the originating document, but the FDA is going to be looking at your ability to take any information you collect and trend that. So if all the information is in one place, your QA data and your production data, and the FDA says, are you getting better at making your product more consistent and safer? You can actually pull the data out and trend it. And that is another reason why you want to get off paper and even spreadsheets where you have 13 different spreadsheets recording different things. Databases are great for doing things like trending information. The final thing you want to see happening when you're doing an inventory system, particularly from the compliance side, is make it real time. Um, you you don't want to have people basically not having the information they need to move forward. And this talks about some of that cultural adaptation you have to do. You know, it used to be in the days, oh, I'll fill the spreadsheet out at the end of the day and then turn it into my boss, at the end of the week. Well, that's not how, when you're doing an inventory control system and you're recording compliance data, if that information is needed to move the product down the line, it needs to be real time. So providing the tools for people to do that, we really recommend things like tablets on the floor. You can get inexpensive Android tablets and put a food grade protective cover over them. We've been deploying them for over 10 years. We've never had one break. We've had the batteries wear out, but there are inexpensive covers on them, and that way receiving can record stuff at the receiving, production line can record stuff at production, your distribution people can record shipments going out, and the data is always real time, whether it's for sales and efficiency reasons or whether it's for QA reasons. Recording full time is really important to make your system flow smoothly.
Very awesome. That's great to hear. And kind of the last thing that we wanted to cover today attached to this is, and we have companies of all size in the webinar. My kind of curiosity around this is, do the auditors go easier on the smaller companies, or do they have to live we have, at a Fortune 500 company, you're going to have a whole department of compliance folks, tons of them. In a smaller company, the person doing compliance is probably doing three other things. Are there more stringent regulations, or do they treat these types of companies different, or do you have to live up pretty much to the same standard with, 1/100th of the staff?
It's funny, sometimes you have to really feel sorry for the QA staff because oftentimes they're driven by things they didn't expect, like sales. Sales wants to sell to Costco. Costco has very high standards. So all of a sudden you're required to do all this additional record keeping and pass an audit, which is, if it's not GFSI, it's very near GFSI. And so that oftentimes is the complexity of your sales channel. Who do you want to sell to? If you're selling to a local health food store, they may not even do a second party audit. They may just basically take your information and you fill out a self-auditing form, and that's fine. So it really is, what is the product we're going to sell to? And the sooner you address that, the easier. We once came into a $50 million bottling company. They actually they were on an inventory system, but the way in which they were using it was they had a poor guy who literally was sitting behind a door. And every time someone would come through the door, he'd get hit by the door. But everyone in the entire facility would bring paper to him and he would enter the inventory system. And they were ready to throw that inventory system out because they were getting big clients and it wasn't working. And I said, the problem isn't your inventory system. The problem is how you're utilizing it. You need to, to match the complexity and the information you need to get it real time and basically head out the responsibilities to be able to pass an audit and to have the information so people like sales and planning can know what's in stock and what's going there. The other things you can do is when you're running on a system with real time, you've recorded all in one place, you can prevent issues. Like whether you're a small company or you're a big company, basically it's having the information so you can make fixes on the go. Because don't forget, compliance isn't just about passing some audit. You also are part of a resource for making sure your product gets to market and is safe and you can continue to grow sales. We had a company that changed a cap supplier one time. And although all the specs were the same on the cap, when they put it on the bottle with the same torque they'd always put it on, it wouldn't come off. So they ended up with 100,000 bottles out in the market where clients couldn't get the cap off. And it wasn't until they went back to their inventory system and saw that, hey, wait, this isn't the supplier that supplied the cap last month. What happened? And they even went through management change. It's just that the management and change process didn't include putting the cap on the bottle and taking it off again. So it was the inventory system where they were able to highlight the problem and not send another 100,000 bottles out. So information in a accessible place is an important tool for your company. And one of the things when I tell people, treat your quality department like a resource, not quality police. They can provide a lot of value to the company because the definition of quality, number one definition, is consistency. The most consistent product is what's treated as the quality product. And the way you get to consistency is knowing the information to get you back on track.
That's great. Yeah, good story. Not good for the bottling company, but yeah,
Happens.
funny anecdote. Um, that's great. So the next thing we were gonna hop in here and do is just to kind of show you a couple of examples of the way that you can embed compliance into your systems instead of doing things completely separately and making it a completely separate function. You can embed compliance tasks into your workflows. And part of what Wherefore does is we force compliance in many areas. The number one being traceability, which I'm kind of going to go through at the end. But the other things that Carlos talked about at great depth, two of them being document storage and then control points throughout your processes. I'm going to talk a little bit about those quickly, but from a document storage and control standpoint, you do have the ability to upload documents in the system, and where this can be invaluable is the audit that we talked about. So if an auditor comes in and asks you specifically, oh, hey, when you receive eggs into the system, it comes in a refrigerated truck. Show me the actual documentation that you took the temperature of that truck when it came in. Well, you can look at a specific purchase order in the system, and we've got the form here where the user, and Carlos talked about having pads out on the dock. You can literally snap a photo of a form that you fill out, and I'm going to go through a way that you can embed that into the system electronically. But even if you have a world in which, and almost every company does, where you've got some things on paper and you have some other things that are in electronic systems, you can actually snap a photo here of that specific check-in form for that purchase order and pull it up in 2 seconds for your auditor instead of rifling through a bunch of files for a document that somebody stored away 6 months ago. So from a document control standpoint, you can have things like certificates of analysis, SOPs, and tag them with specific data parameters. So not only do we know it's a certificate of analysis, we also know it is specifically about this lot code of product that's in the system. So again, if a specific lot of product is identified in the system and you need to pull up documentation attached to that, you can simply scan or type in that lot code and it's going to pull up all the relevant documentation. A couple of other things here, and we're going to go through these relatively quickly, I know, because we want to just kind of show examples of things that are possible in a system. Um, when you think about documenting quality tasks that have been done, typically they're many times they're inventory related, and we'll go through that, but other times they may not be. So we need to do things like machine maintenance. This happens to be a nightly closing checklist that's been set up in the system. These can be customized in a system like Wherefore, where we go through and say, here's our process. We need to go through every night at shutdown, and we need to document that we've done it. We need to check the chemical levels, empty the trash, depressurize hoses. So simple checklist items. But then we also want to do something like check the freezer temperature, and it has to be greater than -5 and less than 25. Otherwise, there's a process that we need to go through to check that. So documenting that freezer temperature every night, going through these checklist tasks, those are unrelated to inventory, but things that an auditor is going to want to see that you did as part of your process. And then we have things that we want to inject into a process, and we would call those control points. In our system, those can be attached to pretty much any inventory task, from bringing material into the system, shipping it out to customers, and then in the production area. And these can be completely customized and anything you want them to be. So if we go in and we look at specifically the refrigerated truck temperature check that we talked about, we've got specific parameters that we need to document when a refrigerated truck comes in. Specifically, it has to be less than 38 degrees. We need to document that. We've got an SOP and what it needs to look like in the system. So we've got a test definition set up. And then we set up an actual control point whereby we set up the parameters that are going to occur when we bring this in. We're going to attach it to one specific inventory item in the system. We're going to go in here and say what needs to occur here. The test must pass to proceed, meaning when I receive this, if my test fails, the stock is going to automatically go into quarantine, so it can't be used. On pass, it's going to make this active. I need to have someone document it, and then maybe I need to have somebody approve it. So you can set up approval cycles, which in a paper system, you've got a piece of paper here. It needs to get to a manager. They need to sign it, needs to get put into a filing system. When you embed it electronically into a process, you can just have a workflow where Jeff approves it, it goes to Carlos, my manager, and he can actually approve it in the system, and then all that's documented. So what does that look like when we do something? We've got a purchase order set up here in the system where we're going to receive some of these eggs that we just talked about. We go ahead and receive these in the system. The first thing that's going to happen is a lot code is going to get assigned to it. The system can do that according to whatever parameters we've set up, and the stock is going to go on hold automatically. So we're going to receive this into inventory. The inventory is going to go on hold automatically in the system, and then it's going to queue up a control point here. And what that's going to do is we've got a quality control point here where we basically need to go in here and document the parameters that, and we know it needs to be below 40. We take the temperature, it's 35. That's going to pass, and we can capture an electronic signature here and save that. So now we've documented that we've actually done that test. It's passed. The material has gone to an active status where then we can use that in production. So that's a quick and easy way. And then if an auditor comes in, that particular task was against a specific PO in the system. So we've done an electronic version of what I showed you earlier, which is having a paper version of a document. Either of them can be done in the system. Either one gets you through an audit. It just depends on how you want to embed that into your processes. I'm going to go through one more example that's pretty similar in the production area, where we're going to have a process by which we accomplish a few things in the system. So at a base level, all of our customers are going to have traceability requirements. So we've got a bill of materials here where I'm making a product and I'm going to take bulk chocolate. I've got some bags. They both have lot codes attached to them. The system is going to track this lot code to this specific batch of product so that I have end-to-end traceability, and we'll go through what can be accomplished in an audit because of that in a minute. But basically, I've got this lot code, this quantity of this product that's going to go into my production run. I'm going to attach that to my actual production process. And I've made these 5 pounds of chocolates. And then I've got a control point here that we've set up, and this material's gone on hold. I need to document that I've done the post-production quality check. And this is just a simple, we've done for demonstration purposes. This could be a pH test. This could be any sort of test that you want. This is just a visual quality check that, yes, this product passes the inspection. And again, we document this. We can capture signature if we want. If you want to upload evidence of a visual check, I could snap a photo of this quickly on a pad device, and that image is actually going to be recorded in the system along with the fact that I performed the quality check. I save that in the system, and again, we have documentation of that quality check having taken place as part of my production process. So basically, you can embed control points into production processes, multiple control points, and we force compliance with an SOP that's been set up by the company. So those are a couple of very quick examples. All of these can be customized, embedded in your process. And I want to go through a quick traceability example as kind of my last thing here. This is a part of any audit. So, and this is something that could easily happen in the system. I've gone to an activity report. So in any good traceability system, everything you do is going to get a date and a timestamp with a lot code attached to it and what type of activity it was. So let's say an auditor comes in and says, oh, here's some cocoa beans. You're a chocolate company. We got these cocoa beans that got delivered to you. Show me what happened to those. Let's say your vendor calls you up and they said that batch of CB003 cocoa beans we sent you back is bad. So we need to do a recall or a mock recall in the system. You can simply go to our recall tool and plug in the affected item, which as we remember here is cocoa beans. We're going to plug that lot code in here, and a process that Carlos talked about that might take a half an hour to do a traceability audit test or a recall. We have the affected material here. We actually have some of it left in stock. We have a work in process item that we've made out of it that needs to be quarantined because that was affected by this stock. And then we've actually have a couple of finished goods that we've made out of it also that need to be quarantined and not sent out to customers. And then we've got a list of shipments of all of the orders that contained any raw material that was produced with that, or any finished good that was produced with that raw material. So doing a recall report can literally take 15 seconds, where if you have a manual system of spreadsheets and paper files, that could take you a half an hour, or if you were able to do it at all. So um, we've got a couple of questions here that I'll answer quickly, and then we'll kind of wrap this thing up. So I want to thank certainly Carlos. I'm going to throw this back up, but in the meantime, I'm going to, so again, thank you to Carlos. One of the questions was, how do we get a more personalized demo to dive into depth? That's a convenient question. That's kind of how we're closing the meeting here. Um, what so another kind of more in-depth question, but basically, what systems in the market comply with FSMA traceability regulations? Certainly, Wherefore does that. There are other ones out there. You can certainly look online, and I would encourage anybody to get a kind of full in-depth demo if you have questions, and make them show you what can actually be done rather than talk about it. It's really important to make sure you get a proper demonstration of any system you're considering using, and make them show you that they can do everything, and so that you can kind of visualize within your company and workflows that it's going to be something that's going to be effective for your company. Another question here, do you integrate with Amazon and Shopify? We integrate with both of those systems, so all of those orders would flow in. That's not really specifically a kind of compliance piece, but we do integrate with those systems. So And then there's one more system that we'll shoot an email. Brian will answer that kind of question offline. It's about QMS documentation. So wanted to give a real quick shout out to Carlos. Really appreciate you coming on and lending your expertise across compliance and ERP systems. Super valuable. We hope everybody enjoyed it, got something valuable out of it. Again, this will be available. It'll get emailed out to you, and it will be available on our YouTube channel if you want to go back and look at specific portions of it. So, Carlos, again, thanks. You appreciate it very much.
Hey, Jeff, I wanted to comment on choosing
Yeah.
an ERP. You mentioned about, traceability and what they do. You're not choosing an ERP for just yourself. You're choosing it for your entire staff. And I, I have where for it in a couple of clients. One of them is a startup, and one of them is a Fortune 500. And the Fortune 500 chose Wherefore based on the interface. And that's one of the things when you're looking at a system. I find most implementations of inventory systems aren't the functionality, it's the interface. Can your staff use it easily? And that's why my Fortune 500 guy found this on their own. And I was surprised because I had been working with Wherefore for a few years. And they're like, well, I found this. What do you think of this? I think if you can find it and you can implement it yourself, that's the kind of tool you want to look for.
Appreciate that. Yeah, because at the end of the day, you have to use the tools, otherwise you don't get anything out of them. Well, yeah, we're at a half hour here, so promise to get everybody in and out quickly. So again, thank you to everybody that attended. Reach out to either of us if you have any specific questions. We appreciate the time and have a great rest of the week.